And greetings from the U.S. and the state of Florida. Before we introduce our panel, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mike Blinder. I am publisher of Editor and Publisher magazine. We always go through housekeepings before we get into the topics and the discussions in our webinars. First of all, welcome to Zoom. Many of you know this platform. Many of you are familiar with this platform, if I may be so bold. I'd like to remind you that in a Zoom platform, we control the audio and video. So we're going to ask you to communicate with us via a platform called Chat. Below your screen, you'll see a chat box. One of the things that Zoom does is it defaults to panelists only in chat. That would mean you'd only be addressing comments or questions to the panelists themselves. It would be better if we had more of an open dialogue. Feel free to simply change that, if you don't mind, to panelists and attendees. That way, if you have a question or a comment or anything, maybe share it with the group, and maybe we can have some dialogue going on the side. Our guest today for our sponsored webinar, first of all, I want to thank our sponsor, FlipPay, is Steve Dempsey. Steve, you are the Group Director of Publishing Products at Mediahus, UK and Ireland, correct, sir?
That's the title, yeah.
That is your current title. How long have you been at Mediahus, sir?
I'd say about 6 or 7 years at this stage. So that counts as a veteran in Mediahus terms.
And you're coming to us from Ireland, I know that, live. And Mediahus, a dominant media company, would it not be in Ireland right now?
Yeah, I mean, previously Mediahus is a Belgian company, so we were bought by the Belgian company about 2 or 3 years ago, and before that we were called Independent News and Media, and we would have been the largest commercial news publisher on the island of Ireland. So we've got a host of regional titles, the biggest selling newspaper titles in the south of Ireland, and one of the biggest in Northern Ireland as well. So we've a good array of products in the market. Paul
McCarthy-Brain, I had to do that. I mean, because if we stop in the middle there, we get a little reference to, I would say, my age being 65. Paul, you are the CEO of FlipPay. You're also a neighbor of Steve's, right? You're Ireland-based as well.
I am indeed, and Steve is about a mile away from my house.
There you go. And Rick Vandervoon. Rick, you are located where in the United States, sir?
Just outside of New York City.
Okay, Vice President, Development North America for FlipPay. So, Rick, your mission, when all this is said and done, is to kind of make sure that the United States, or I should say North American news publishers, become more aware of the FlipPay model that is being so successful in Europe. Am I correct, sir?
That is correct, Mike.
Anyone who's attending this webinar, watching the recording, we get tons of people who watch them after we finish with them. Please, by all means, make sure you reach out to Rick. Rick will be in the chat room as well to answer any questions. More importantly, Rick's contact information will come up at the end of the webinar. Let's go back to Steve, if we may. Steve, I want you to tell me a little bit more about Mediahus now. More importantly, what is your role? Since we're interviewing you, what does a group director of digital publishing do at Mediahus?
Probably a lot of things, I think, and it has changed as the media industry has changed over time. So we've gone through a few different incarnations over the last few years. Initially, the role would have been envisioned as a very typical product role that sits between technology, editorial, and commercial, and tries to make sure all elements play nice together. We had a very simplified outlook on the world until about 2 or 3 years ago, because we didn't have, we only had an advertising revenue stream. We were solely B2B online. So it made life quite easy in terms of negotiating those different internal stakeholders and trying to keep an eye on the user or the reader or the customer. We didn't actually have any paying online subscribers. Ireland doesn't have a history of people subscribing to pay for news. So as a result, there's a lot of people who just like buy newspapers for free, and there isn't I don't know, we're just not used to subscribing to news channels online or in print. So it meant, at the start of my time in Mediahus, or in I&M as it was then, life was quite simple, and it was easy. We had a large operation, and we were able to bring in users at scale. What we've done over the last few years is, with the difficulties that we all are aware about with online advertising, and we were rather late to pivot to a subscription model. We were certainly late in the Irish market amongst the bigger players, which actually had some advantage. There's early mover advantage, and sometimes there's late mover advantage as well. So a lot of my work over the last few years has been involved in the pivot to a subscription model, sourcing vendors such as Paul, ensuring that there was a transformation program that went along internally with all the work that we were doing on a technological basis. So the business has changed, and with that, the role has changed. But it still fundamentally involves making sure there's internal alignment across different stakeholders in groups like commercial, editorial, technological.
This is interesting. So you were watching us in the US try to figure it out and move towards a subscription, because we were, we all were kind of free at the beginning when we were 98, 99, starting to play in this wild west. Then you guys stayed in the free model. Then your culture needed to adapt by understanding that we're now going to start locking down content. Has everyone locked it down, or do you have broadcast that's still wide open? How competitive is the space?
Broadcast. Yeah, we have broadcast that's wide open. We have a state broadcaster who is mandated to keep their information free, and there's legislative issues there. They probably shouldn't be creating online news for free that would be in competition with people who are struggling to stay alive. We're exposed in Ireland to an awful lot of international media, and still an awful lot of it is for free. So in the UK, titles like the Daily Mail, the BBC obviously is massive. The Guardian is still free for people who don't want to actually give money across. And then we would be exposed to a lot of US media as well. Not as much as people in the US might think. I hate to break it to you. We weren't fundamentally looking at you, Mike. We were looking at people in the UK and our biggest competitor in Ireland as well, which is the Irish Times. So we would have been aware of them building a new commercial model and creating kind of market demand. And there's a little bit of education that goes with building a subscription business in a market that isn't used to it. There's still, like the Reuters research that comes out says, we're at about 11% of the population in Ireland is willing to pay for online news. So that we're still quite immature in that area in terms of what people are willing to pay. And look, when you compare the cost of subscribing to a news outlet to your Spotify subscription or your Netflix subscription, it's relatively expensive to pay for news. And sometimes most of the news is bad news as well. So it's an uphill battle to educate people to the values of subscribing to news.
All right. So what are your overall objectives now with, the mandate has come down. You realize, okay, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Steve, but obviously similar to us here in the US, you got Facebook and Google that just snapped a whole mess of your local revenue. I mean, not just for you, all media right off the table. You didn't even see it coming. I'm assuming you were making money in the classified verticals as well as we were here in the US for decades, freestanding inserts for decades, all that automatic demand-driven business, if I may use a US term that unfortunately made this industry here fat and lazy, more demand-driven. We were more distribution model, just for everybody's ads. Suddenly the reality comes to you that you gotta start making more money elsewhere, because advertising is not going to support in any way, shape, form, or size the journalism you guys are trying to crank out. So what is the strategy now, if I ask, moving forward today through all of these challenges that you have?
I mean, the strategy is still centered around credible news brands that have built trust up with the population over many, many years. And once you get that bit right, you can build a lot of legs of the stool off of that. So we do, like, overall as a group, we have a distribution business that's doing very, very well. We've got really good trucks that go around the country and deliver stuff. That doesn't really overlap with the news area so much. What does overlap is we also have we do have some good classified businesses that we're really kind of aggressively kind of beginning to leverage as well. So we had a cars classified vertical that then morphed into a business that offered software solutions to sales outlets. We've just bought the biggest classified person in the market in terms of cars as well. So we're finding niche areas and building products around those. But fundamentally, when it comes back to news and the trusted news products, we know that a huge amount of work still remains about visibility and relevance. But when you dial down to the aims that we have, we initially had a very small target around the online subscriptions. We need to flip. What we said to ourselves is we want to have the same number of readers, and we need to flip them maybe from people who would buy a newspaper into people who will subscribe online. So that's the kind of strategic aim. It's like for like, and that's hard because we're still in the declining market in terms of print sales. But our aim is over the next 2 years to get to 100,000 digital subscribers.
My one of my many travels this year was the local media consortium. May not have heard them here in the US, but it's where all the ad tech people get together and speak words that some I don't even understand, but they are pretty brilliant. And I had a panel mostly European. And one of the things that we were discussing is privacy and how it's affecting cookies going away. There goes Chrome, and eventually the need for first-party data. I assume on the many challenges you have at Mediahus, they're screaming at you, collect data, collect data. So it's not just revenue, right? It's capture this audience now before we lose that programmatic sphere, correct?
And it is, but there's a particular challenge in the Irish market because Ireland is small. You know, you need data at scale. And there is a question about how much value you can wring out of a small data set. Let's say like there's 6 million people on this island, maybe there might be a bit more at this stage, maybe it's 6.5. Even all of those, even if you had some first party data on all of those, it may not be enough to actually leverage, you know, certainly the way the likes of Facebook or Google can at scale to actually kind of extract value. So first party data is hugely important to us, but it's actually quite unclear how markets.
Are you okay? Well, we lost you just for a second there, Steve.
No, sorry. My last point was that it's unclear to me anyway. I would be questioning how valuable first party data might be in smaller markets.
Okay, but it's still on your plate. It's something. So anything you can capture is, God forbid, you want it at this point.
Anything we can capture is vital, and we're doing it. However, there may be a case that the opportunity costs of getting and maintaining that data in line with the GDPR rules that we need to live with is it could be a loss leader for us.
All right, I want to ask one more question about your lay of the land corporately. Do you act? Does each market act individually, or are they all being standardized now under your purview? Because you got a lot of markets, a lot of managers, a lot of brands, a lot of people arguing with each other, I'm sure, about who gets your attention. What's the infrastructure like?
The stated aim of the group is to have a single kind of tech infrastructure that is deployed across the multiple markets that we're in, which is Ireland and the UK to a smaller degree, the Netherlands, Belgium, small part of Germany, and Luxembourg. So that's the vision. However, as anyone who really knows the nitty gritty of how kind of publishers' websites work, there are a series of horrible and horrific integrations with awful technical debt built up over time. So what happens regularly is there are compromises made. So the pure vision of a single tech stack may not be realistic, but it's still something that we can aim towards, and there's probably considerable value that can come from standardizing as many parts of the tech stack as possible.
It's exactly what I heard at the LMC. I mean, if you got too many tools in your toolbox, you're reaching in there all the time, right? It'd be nice to standardize it, and this is what everybody was screaming at this point.
But I think there's a bit of a fallacy there, though, Mike, because the right technology for a lot of the time is the technology you have to start with. There's unless there's a burning need to get off a platform, you're burning money to get off the platform. So I think publishers, there's always been this call for a single CMS or a single way of doing this, and it's kind of like a childish kind of drawing of what a dream might look like. And then when you dial down into it, it may look great from the C-suite perspective, but when you dial down into it, it ain't pretty, and it's not easily achieved.
You know what's so funny is we have a lot of techie ad tech people attending this, a small group. This is a very narrow topic, but we have thousands and thousands of publishers who will be referencing this in the months to come, who are just entering in their brain how important this is, but they're not doing anything. You realize there's still a lot of people caught in neutral. So I want to make sure before we get into the discussion of the solution, obviously I'm setting the lay of the land before we talk about the solution. I got a slide up here that everybody's looking at. Key issues shaping your content monetization strategy. Would you say this is pretty much it? Diversity from sole reliance on advertising revenue. We just covered that. Rapid, you got to move quick, flexible, agile scalability, roll out across the entire portfolio. You just said that. Simplify, efficient user experience. And of course, you want it to work. Is that pretty much summing it all up for you?
Yeah, and I think there can be a lot hidden in, let's say, the fourth bullet point there, agile scalability. What we've realized is that one of the things that we weren't great at previously would be running experiments based on hypotheses. So, if we change the funnel for people to purchase in a particular way, we'll see an uplift. If we deploy halfway through a sales funnel, kind of an upsell or a cross-sell opportunity, we might see increased ARPU. You know, these little kind of things is really where we're currently struggling, or not struggling, but focusing a lot of time and effort on maturing. So I think that is a key thing as well. It's about operationalizing the technology we have, and there's a lot of learning in that, because you need a flexible team who can think in terms of hypotheses and tests. But really, you're not testing the technology; you're testing the potential reader and whether they're interested in what you're doing or not. So it really is like live experiments. You know, you really are, you know, talking about how people will respond to commercial offers, your brands. Key is the changing news agenda, because as anyone who's on this call who looks at news analytics will tell you, you can never do a like for like test on news websites, because everyone is going to want to subscribe on a day, or will look at particular articles on a day where there's really massive news. Like, we have these huge spikes whenever there's violent crimes in Ireland, because it's like, if there's a shooting in Ireland, I hate to say it to an American audience, it's a massive news story, because we don't get that many of them in the country, and we see huge spikes in traffic as a result, and then we see huge spikes in subscription, and huge spikes in B2B revenue as well. So you can actually tell, according to the news agenda, how things change. So we're beginning to understand. It's like surfers, you know, we're beginning to learn how to ride these waves, and they are waves of the news agenda, and then it's figuring out how our tech, how our board itself works as well.
And this is still across a whole mess. I was looking through your company and your brands. I love that term. That's what I like to call it, not just platforms, but brands. They're all different, right? You got print, digital, e-papers, mobile apps, national titles, regional titles, magazines. You're all over the place, right? This is not just for someone who is attending this webinar that's just worrying about a news publishing product. Imagine all the, and these may grow, correct? You may be niching out for the decades to come. Am I correct?
Yeah. Oh, there's radio stations and TV stations as part of the group as well. So it's it's a broad church.
And what about audio? Are you going down the road there and podcasting and video and all that and more? I think I lost Steve for a second there. Steve, are you still there, sir?
There's some very interesting work being done in the Netherlands. Oh,
okay, I got you now. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. There's some very interesting work being done in the Netherlands around podcasting. And again, it's one of the issues around in the Netherlands and in Belgium, because they speak Dutch or Flemish, they have a bit more control over what they do. So they've built their own kind of podcast player within their news app. And there are less people listening to podcasts on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, so they can actually keep a captive audience on their own platform, which is a fabulous thing to be able to do. We wouldn't be able to do that in the Irish market, because everyone goes off and listens to podcasts wherever they listen. So you know, the language barrier across our different titles in the different markets makes a huge difference to what is achievable.
All right, so let's get into FlipPay now. These gentlemen, you've been so quiet for the first third of our webinar. Thank you. I know you've been chomping at the bit, but I don't think you can discuss solutions till you can start discussing the problems first and the challenges. So you're now using FlipPay. Is that correct, Steve? I mean, obviously, they wouldn't have invited you to be their case study today unless they were, but how's this journey working? And I'd like to ask our panelists, all of them, to chime in if they wish. What am I looking at right now? And describe to me the strategy that went behind how you're now adapting the paywall, subscription, membership, registration walls, voluntary contributions, micropayments, day passes, begging for cash, making them a club member, go on and on and on. I mean, anything that has to do with this reader revenue, that's what we call it here on this side of the pond. Could you kind of go over the strategy and what's going on, and maybe have these gentlemen talk about how they deployed it? Go ahead.
Well, I'll give the brief intro, and the easiest thing is to discuss what we cut out at the start. So when we knew about 2019 before Belgium, we knew we needed to start this journey, and it took us about a half to get the full subscription business up and running. We knew we didn't want micropayments. We knew we couldn't do that at scale.
Say that again. No micropayments. No micropayments, correct?
No micropayments.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was all going to be subscription based. No begging bowl. So we're not in a position like the Guardian in the UK that can say we're a charitable trust. We want to espouse a particular editorial outlook. We are commercially minded. We're in it for the buck, as well as the commercial good that, or the social good that news is. So we wanted the money down. So we decided that it was a subscriptions business. It's very much in line with our main competitor, the Irish Times, had done, because they had made the market for us. So effectively, we stood into the market with a similar offering to them. There was 3 or 4 subscription offerings, monthly or annual bundles, and 2 kind of flavors of each. One kind of the free premium, kind of the lowest level of premium access, and then one with additional access. Actually, that's not true. There's also a home delivery access, but that's a much harder sell because people in Ireland, as I said earlier, just aren't used to getting their papers delivered. So
how did this start? I mean, Paul, did they come to you? Did you go to them? Did they scream, we got a million different ways we got to do this, and we want to make it elegant, quick, easy, simple to deploy? I mean, I'm setting you up because that's what this was all about. One common platform to handle like a myriad of different ways to meter and or to get these payments, right? Am I right, Paul?
Yeah, correct. We'd had a number of discussions with INM, as it was then, and now Mediahus, with regards to, they were looking to monetize e-papers, and that's kind of fundamentally where we started. Then when you started with the flipbook e-paper model first, right? Simply having the replica online. Yes, sir. Yes, correct. Okay, go ahead. So and that was for a period of around 9 months, and then I think after that period there was a longer, and Steve will tell you more about this, but there was a full digital transformation project underway within INM to start looking at how they can move away from an ad-centric monetization model to something which involved kind of digital monetization for content. So we were part of a bidding process. So we were up against the big players in the market like Piano, and we had to go through a series of due diligence. And I think that we won it through a process whereby we were able to provide the end-to-end solution for Mediahus, a single platform that would do not only the paywall, but also the subscription management, the account management, the financials, and the integration with the existing kind of providers. And we could do that as a single platform, and that's how we kind of bidded for the contract. And we showed them a series of working models that we developed. And if you go on to the next screen, we'll show you. So this is a good example of what we do, and very much like we're very aligned with Mediahus in terms of our approach, which is onboard the customer as quickly as possible. And this is probably one of our shortest journeys. We can deploy this, in days as well on new titles. So it's the user selects the product on the left, so they hit subscribe. They log in using social or email. We then show them their plan and then give them the payment option. And so you click Google Pay or Apple Pay, or you put in your credit card details and you're subscribed. There's no forms to fill in. There's no pages and pages of data. This is all done on a mobile first centric platform. So it's subscribe, log in, Google Pay, done. And that's kind of one of the main things that we actually managed to refine with the e-paper, and things like day passes and things like that for e-paper and annual subscriptions. We then translated that then to the main digital sites for the national titles. So we have this kind of flow, and we also have things like what we call a shopfront flow, where you would have all of the possible bundles, which are on the previous page to this one, where you can go and select annual and annual and monthly products, and then you can drill down. And these can all be defined dynamically. And since then, we've worked in conjunction with Mediahus to innovate rapidly. One of the core tenets of FlipPay is our agility and our ability to act as a technical partner rather than as a supplier of technology, which means that when Mediahus come to us, and they often do, we've had an idea, this is what we want to do. We can prototype this very, very quickly and then get it into a staging or a test environment for for the rest of the business then to kind of flesh out these ideas. So it's been a good journey between the two companies over the last 3 years.
Steve, how is this? I'm gonna say elegant solution on the reader level. I love what you said, Steve, because it's all about the reader, right? It doesn't matter how happy you are. It doesn't matter how happy your managers are or your editorial folks. It means will the end game, the final reader, enjoy or at least not hate the experience, if I may be so bold. How is that going right now, Steve? I mean, what kind of feedback did you get initially, and how are you modifying or changing it to keep it as I guess seamless as possible?
Well, just to cover the first question, like many media companies, we're very poor at doing user testing. So we didn't do any proper testing before launch. We went live. We were confident enough. You could say that's a great thing. We were confident, but on another level, we really didn't know how this would go when we launched it. All the flows had been very much defined. Like Paul and his team supported all the back end requirements, but all the flows were very much defined by our business analysts, and we had an external UX company working with us, and we had our own internal design team doing the front end. So Paul was very good at, and his team were very good at kind of seamlessly plugging into everything we defined, and we tweaked it a lot. Right, our initial products looks quite different to how it did now. And we've also done some kind of weird about faces. We tried metering, I think about 1.5 years ago, and then we pulled it after about 2 months because allowing people to sample was having a huge detrimental effect to the amount of people who are subscribing. So we have been able to test stuff, but we've also been able to adjust quite quickly if we find things aren't working out. So initially they went really well. Our target for the initial first year was 7,000 subscribers. We did that, I think, in 2 months. So we were very pleased with ourselves initially. I think we probably hit about 30,000 in the first year, I think. So we were delighted with ourselves. We thought that was a real success. Our other people around the group, like in Belgium, thought it was amazing as well because they'd never seen growth like this. So it was very much the case of here's what happens when you hold the tennis ball into the water and let go, it shoots up. Things have become a lot more difficult since then. So our targets for last year were 50,000, and we're just about over that now. I think we're somewhere around 60,000 all in. So things are beginning to slow down. And we are beginning to see that retention is vitally important, as I'm sure anyone who runs a subscription business on this call knows. We're getting to grips with what the nitty gritty of that really means. And I think that there's three sides to it. One is, as we've said, it's how the user will respond. And two, it's having the maturity of the team to know how to do a good save, how to bring people back if they're thinking of leaving. And three is having the technical capabilities to know what's going to happen. If somebody's credit card is about to run out, Paul's system, if any of the user agent is in there, will be flagging like, this happens. And we've built things that happen in the front end automatically as well to remind users your credit card is about to expire. If you want to keep this subscription going, you're going to need to do some work on your end. So it's constant work, right? We're at a coalface constantly, and the coalface is changing constantly. So we're happy with how it's going, but I don't know. It's kind of like the harder you work, the harder you got to work to keep going as well.
I'm an old guy here. I mean, I started selling digital services in 1997 when we didn't even know what the internet was. So that's why I'm doing this for a reason. I want to bring Rick in for a second because I always look at the different transitional times in our industry. When I say industry, I mean news publishing. And we at E&P define news publishing, who our audience is, which is 80% C-suite executives, based on our tagging, as someone who crafts news content, has to find an audience for it and monetize it. Those are the three things. We don't care if it's print. We don't care if it's digital. We don't care if it's broadcast. We don't care if it's a surgical implant at birth. We're just trying to get to the person who has to craft that content, find that audience, and monetize it. Rick, we're at a transitional time right now here in the US. I'm going to take us over the pond to where we are right now, where I've seen this before. When I was out when the first database product, I was pitching one of the first verticals ever to a media group. We finally figured out a way to actually aggregate automotive data. This was before there was a cars.com. And I can go back and back and back in time as we just advance. Now we're at a time where everybody's going for reader revenue. Rick, you're the one. I mean, you're pretty well. I mean, you've got a good background in this industry. Why did you believe in your heart of hearts that you wanted to be the face of Flip Play here compared to all the people right now that are out now marketing different methods for capturing this and getting that reader revenue in the door? Rick, I'm going to give you a chance to give us your take on this as far as the US goes.
Sure. Well, as a former publishing exec, former ad tech exec, and now current pub tech exec, I've been, we've all been seeing the decline in advertising and the increasing demand and reliance on reader revenue. And when I came upon FlipPay, I saw the success that they were having with Mediahus and other publishers and content providers around the world. And the fact that the last time they looked at our category, Digiday plucked and picked FlipPay as the best subscription platform against better known players. And so I reached out to Paul and said, hey, Paul, how would you like me to head up your North American efforts? And started the conversation, and here we are today, 8 or 9 months later. So it's really the opportunity and the excitement to take the success that FlipPay has had around the world and bring it to the North American market.
What kind of acceptance are you getting as you start to talk to the other ad tech people? What are they saying about, because what you're doing is not uncommon. I remember when I took on my first, I know I'm digressing and I know it's your show, guys, you're paying for it, but I entered Europe and I ended up doing a lot of travel through Europe. I did markets in Germany, UK. I even went to Russia under a previous world. But I remember going into Austria. I was chatting about this in the green room with you. Valburg Mediahuis, Austin Russ. Augen Russ, he was an amazing man. One of the most innovative publishers I've ever met in my life. And he screamed at me. He said, we in Europe are way advanced beyond you guys technology-wise. You in the US are way advanced beyond us in making money. He wanted me to instill greed in his department, teach them how to sell multimedia. But you are not alone here, Rick. There are many European solution providers now coming into the US saying, hey, look, guys, we've already built the model. Is that something, how are you being accepted as you're introducing this solution across the different sized properties and owners and tech guys?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question. I mean, we're seeing really great acceptance in terms of publishers and content providers of all sizes willing to talk to us. The great thing about FlipPay is we can work with publishers and content providers of all sizes. And the fact that we offer both the complete end-to-end suite of solutions, the entire platform, as well as individual tool sets means that anyone looking to simplify and replace their platform, we've got a story for them. And anyone that simply wants to add an award-winning tool to their existing complicated tech platform, if you will, can cherry pick our tools. So we're seeing a great reception and willingness to talk to us. And I think part of it is a frustration with some of the bigger players out there, to be honest with you.
Meaning, I mean, you don't have to name names, but I want to hear it. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously FlipPay does not have the name recognition of some of the other folks in our field. And just the feedback we're getting is, that a lot of our competitors are expensive, inflexible, slow, not very agile, and don't treat their clients as partners, true partners, which is what we do.
Okay. I want to circle back and revisit two topics quickly before we dive into FlipPay, because we're getting on the backside now. Now it's time to turn this thing into the final solution. Steve, you said that capturing first-party data is not as important it wasn't rule number 1 to you like we're screaming here in the United States. But now I want to ask Paul this. Paul, flip pay, excuse me, could be a perfect solution for just the person who just, or the media company that just needs right now to think about data capture. Data capture, is that part of your suite of services as well as paywall? I mean, help me understand all the different ways you can help publishers meet the challenges of a cookieless world, if I may put it that way.
It's great. There's a whole load of questions going on now. I'll try and answer the bits that I can remember, and then you can ask me again. I think the most important thing to understand is that when you're talking about a paywall is just a barrier. And there may be a barrier which ends up in a customer paying, but there may be a barrier which ends up with the customer not paying. So you can have things like reg walls, and you can stick meters and so on all the way in front of the customer. And if you're doing a reg wall, you can ask questions. But there's also stuff that you can do in the background as well in terms of the amount of data that you capture about the user. And Steve mentioned an important point here, which is in Europe, we've got GDPR, which is quite restrictive policies in terms of what you can capture for the user. And it is to protect the consumer. And I believe you have the same thing with CCPA in California, which is a variant of GDPR. But one of the things that FlipPay does is when we're doing like a free journey, so you're putting up a reg wall barrier, what you can do then is, again, you can capture that information, or we do what's called event triggering. And we do this with Mediahus, and we do this with a lot of other publishers as well, which is when we're tracking consumer behavior on the site and we're capturing information about the end user, then what we're doing is we're then triggering these events up into things like Google Analytics. So where GA is then giving you demographic data, we're then putting sort of activity tracking data alongside that demographic stuff. Google's really good at that, and there's no point us trying to replicate that. So what we do is we augment the information that you might see in GA. And then also, if there are simple things like you want to capture, marketing preferences, or you want to, collect information about interests and so on and so forth. Again, you're doing this because you're already capturing the identity of the users when you're onboarding them as part of the reg wall. And we are an identity-first customer. So a lot of
I love that. I was just about to say, my mind was going, you are a data capturer. I love the way you put it, identity-first product. It's all about capture, which is what everyone's screaming here now because we're getting so nervous. But I want to move on to another topic, though. This is where Steve, I thought, was brilliant. Steve, you seem to be the kind of guy like I am. You're like fail fast, fail cheap. If it isn't working, you try something else. Am I right? And Steve, you're all into A/B testing. Am I right, sir? I mean, you don't mind testing something against something else, seeing what works and doesn't, then dump this and stay with this. You don't just stay in a lane because your ego makes you stay there. Am I right, Steve?
No, we don't mind. We're always happy to test. However, it's a sorry tale, and I was just had the 561st installment of it that we have very limited A/B testing capabilities in our platform. In fact, the only place where we can A/B test is in Paul's arena, where we can test some of the dynamic fields that are brought in. But previously, in previous incarnations, we did a lot of testing, and we learned a lot from not just kind of split testing, but all sorts of interesting tests. Like we test different teasers, different headlines. We tested weighting of different types of article on a page. So for an audience that had a propensity to engage with sports content, we served them way more sports content over a period of time and learned a lot from those things. So we do have a good kind of culture of testing. When it comes to testing subscription stuff, though, we still are a bit mature. We're still kind of finding our way. Paul has provided some tools. We probably haven't come anywhere near fully testing the capabilities of what FlipPay can do in testing yet. We're still figuring out how to sell the thing before we start getting fancy.
I'm sure Paul will be there to assist you through that journey. But Paul, okay, or Steve, let's finally. So you made this. This is why you considered FlipPay, right? And there's some words on the screen that supposedly kind of came through you. This is marketing. This is a paid webinar. Everybody gets that. We're here to feature this product. agility, end-to-end functionality, rapid innovation, focused on monetization. Would you say this sums it all up? This is the reason why you picked this company?
Well, it's definitely the case now that we're working with them, but I do think that things look different with hindsight. So one of the reasons it boiled down to, my memory of how this worked out is, it boiled down to, if it was a straight up shoot between FlipPay and Piano, and internally there was a lot of people who wanted to go with Piano, and I think there was a belief that because they were big and expensive, they were probably going to be better. And I think there is an argument to be made that sometimes the right partner is someone who's going to go on a journey with you, rather than like going into like a big, anonymous department store who's just going to flog you some stuff. I got that impression from Paul, that he was going to work with us, that he was going to help us. That's totally been the case. Part of it is we already had an existing relationship. Like Paul said, that e-paper product that was being sold predated the subscription journey that we went on. That mattered. That meant that there was trust built up there over time. And looking back, I think we were very lucky that we had that pre-built relationship. So I remember actually when that was done, that deal was done, and it was kind of pushing uphill. We were just switching out a previous provider for FlipPay just to see what happens. It wasn't a key strategic goal, and actually it was one of the things that made us more likely to go with FlipPay. The other thing that happened is we were bought just before we launched the subscription business, and Paul and his team had to go through the validation and the tender process effectively again. So they were kind of double tested by the time we actually went live. We were very close to launch at that stage, so we certainly knew that Paul at that point was going to be able to be very focused on monetization, very focused to work with us as we matured our own business, because we really had no capabilities. We didn't bring in a team of people who had done this before in the Irish market. We have some very strong marketers, we had some very strong people who'd done customer service, but no one had done this. Sorry, there was one or two people who had done something like this in the news arena that we poached from competitors. So we were beginning to get an inkling of all these things, but honestly, I have to say that it was only after the fact that we began to realize just how lucky we were and how we made the right decision, rather than going with the bigger, kind of more stable seeming, more reliable seeming kind of partner, but somebody who is just like, you got to pay more to get it up and running. You got to pay staff to get them up and running with the tools. Paul really effectively now, like, we have our regular meetings. It's like just someone else who's on the team. And like, if we say, oh, we've got a great idea, either the answer is, oh yeah, we can do that, or Paul would say, oh, we can't do that yet, but give me a week and it'll be up and running. And it's, so it's been I think we've been very lucky, because I don't know if we knew exactly what we were looking for while we were tendering for the right vendor.
All right, so let's do the rollout real quick, just so everybody understands how quick this thing went down. How did you roll FlipPay out? You started with 2 sites, right? And then immediately just started adding. Is this how this went, Steve?
Yeah, it was a bit more complicated than that. Yeah, we had 2 main sites. I think we went live. We didn't go live with the 2 of them concurrently. This would have been independent.ie and belfasttelegraph.co.uk. And then slowly we rolled out bundles that would have applied to our regional titles, but not all the regionals have their own websites. Some of them are subdomains of the bigger titles as well. So what we did was we rolled out different versions of FlipPay through effectively managing SKU codes or bundles through kind of regional e-paper products rather than directly selling. And it's a bit of a mess, right? But it's all of our own making. We're trying to figure out how best to sell. Once the FlipPay technology was in there, we could then try and package up different products in different ways that could be sold through different portals at different times. So there was a lot of learning.
But right now, all your properties are working with this platform, correct?
All bar one. We have one title in the Irish market that still isn't doing subscriptions. That's the Sunday World. It's a tabloidy crime kind of. It wouldn't have a strong subscription base, and it's also it's a Sunday, right? It's a once a week, so it doesn't have the same currency as the larger titles.
All right, you pretty much did it then. No matter print, digital, home delivery, you did it all, and you managed to pull this off. I got to swing it back now because we're only left with about 10 or 12 minutes. So I want to swing back now and give Paul a chance to really brag. If that's okay, Paul, I would like you to truly show us now under the hood what FlipPay really does, just in case someone else on this webinar or watching the recording in the months to come wants to use this as a means to figure out all the different aspects of what you have. And by the way, Steve, if there's something he says that's chiming with you, feel free to, to join in. But Paul, run it down for me, would you?
Yeah, first of all, we do actually operate on the Sunday world. We do the print home delivery, I think, on that one, and e-paper now.
So you got it, 100%.
There you go. Yeah, that is true. I was wrong.
There you go.
We don't do the car one.
There is a technology partner. He knows you inside and out. Go ahead, Paul, but run it down for us.
All right. So we're looking at here is basically what you would typically look at from getting the supplying of 4 or 5 companies, and this is what we're finding when Rick's going out talking to US publishers. They're saying they've got, the user journey onboarding section, which is the first 2 columns. That's the paywall, and then they've got another company then doing subscription management, and that's doing all the payments and creating the product funnels. And then in the 3rd column, which is account management, they have another tool which is being used to run their customer service help desk, do telesales, run their print delivery if they have a print system, and also things like email. In the 4th column, they're using other companies then to do analytics and the reporting. And in the 5th column is the fact that we can integrate with everything. So what FlipPay does is we provide everything from the user onboarding on the websites, using things. We've got our rules engine. So as when we were talking about A/B testing, we also have things called like overrides. So you could say everybody pays this price for this product. But then you can then create new rules, and there's no code here. This is all drag and drop and ticking boxes. It's very simple to do. But now you can create rules and say people coming in via Facebook or LinkedIn from this particular geographic region on a mobile device. Now we're going to show them slightly different messaging, and we're going to show them a different price. And you can create rules. So at a very high level, you can say people in Canada pay this, people in France pay this. And it works very, very quickly for setting up kind of rules at a geographic level. We also have a full identity management suite built into the platform. So all of your social logins, email, sort of password forget, resets, all that kind of stuff. And we also have a full account management suite, which is pre-built for publishers. So if you're coming to us with a brand new title which has never had subs before, we can provide you with all the things which allow customers to self-service themselves. So when their credit cards expire or are about to expire, there's a part on your website which now allows them to update their payment details. They can reset passwords and so on and so forth, and manage their subscriptions, even upgrade and downgrade themselves. So we believe very heavily in self-service to lower the cost of supporting these customers.
What say you, Paul, about how you work with the other vendors that he may have? Or how about someone in the United States here who's working with 9 other vendors that wants to integrate this data? We're having that same trouble here at E&P right now, trying to get our print subscription data married to our email data, now married to the third-party collection system we're having and a new system we're doing. I mean, it's just getting crazy. How easy do you adapt into all the different vendors that might be in Steve's world? Or Steve, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I can give us our experience, and then so it sounds more valid coming from me. I guess we have we don't use Paul for identity management. We still use Gigya, which is a legacy tool that we had, and it's, to be honest, on half the time I wish we did use Paul, because it would simplify things, and sometimes people like Gigya are difficult to work with. We also have an outsourced app development team. It's really seamless. We're very lucky with some of the vendors. I think it's one of the key things people need to understand in publishers, that if you find good vendors, if you have good technology, try and cling onto it. Even if a CFO or a strategic partner or an advisor is saying, no, you really need to move, there really needs to be a strong imperative to change if something is working. And everything works really well for us. We have a very good team of people, like, our app partners would be very similar to Paul, in that I can ring them right now and I can say, look, we're thinking of doing this, and without going into discovery and t-shirt sizing and coming back with a kind of a very rigorous proposal, it's just like talking to a colleague. It's just like a water cooler discussion. Oh yeah, we could do that. Maybe we'll do it this way. Paul and his team work very much like that. That's what we need because we're still starting this journey. That's what all our favorite vendors do. So our app developers and our current CMS is kind of run by an outsourced team in part of the Netherlands as well. And they're very similarly kind of agile in their mindset. You can have a conversation about whether something is like possible, the right thing to do. You'll get a really clear steer, and there's a lot of trust that's been built up over time with these people. So it's really important for me that you're able to see the whites of people's eyes and have like robust conversations and say, look, we really need to do this. And somebody, if Paul says to me, you really need to, but not like this, that matters to me, and I'll take that and I'll go and fight that fight. So, you know, it's not just people who will be willing to kind of let you do the wrong thing, which you need to do when you're doing this sort of work, but people who can help you on that path and who would have seen other publishers make similar stumbles. And certainly, like Paul isn't just a kind of an outsourced kind of tech platform for us, that there's an advisory kind of nature to it as well, which is really beneficial.
Paul, are you blushing? That was my word, sir. You are agile, aren't you?
Well, I'm getting older now, so not that agile. Yeah, no, listen, Steve's right. You know, in terms of the flexibility is key, and the way in which our platform was constructed was we build everything with what's called APIs, and we do that first. So it means we can integrate with anything. So as Steve said, with Mediahuis, there was already an existing identity management. So we don't use ours, we use theirs, and it took about a day worth of integration to use Gigia. Same thing with things like the payments engine, you know, so we can you know, we integrate with an existing payments engine. We can you know, kind of replicate funnels. We can even migrate users from one system to another. So there's, you know, it can be anything from, you know, just integrating with existing providers at a fairly low level.
I am using a lot of
migrating people, you know. So
I was going to say, I'm going to use another American colloquialism just to trip you guys up. So what's on deck now? What are the new features you're I've got a slide up here, but it's time to talk about the future now. What's going to be happening down the road? Steve, Paul, what do you got planned? We want to know now. And
well, we've just launched a kind of I said earlier on that we flirted with some form of metering and sampling last year, and it didn't work as intended. So we've gone back. We've created a new flavor of that with Paul's team and with our own kind of UX team, and we've created a method of a kind of a 3-level approach to sampling. That some articles will remain free, the kind of commoditized news that people can get effectively everywhere. Some articles will be registration gated, and we've also built in as part of that registration gate an awful lot of first party that needs to be captured. And then some articles will be stuck behind a paywall as they always were. So that's the latest kind of developments that we've done. A lot of our development pipeline currently is taken up with something that's nothing to do with FlipPay really, which is we are migrating all our systems over to the Belgian CMS and various kind of components and parts of it. So that's effectively a lot of our roadmap is taken up, but we still have a B2C team. So this is not kind of my team. They're not technical in nature, they're sales and marketing in nature. And they would be, I don't know how often they get in touch with Paul, but my sense is it's like 2 or 3 times a day saying, hey, Paul, can we do this? Hey, Paul, can we do that? Hey, Paul, like, can you export data from this to this so we can use it to market people that way? So we are moving from technology infrastructure work and capabilities to operationals, which for me is exactly where we need to be as a maturing subscription business.
Sounds like a plan. You'll sleep better at night once you finish that move. I bet you'll have.
I don't know. I don't know. I used to have control over my websites, and now I need to ring somebody in Antwerp. So I don't know. I think I'll sleep worse.
But at least you got Steve here on your side. Steve, it sounds like your phone's going to be ringing and texts are going to be coming in. I mean, I was going to say Paul on your side because Paul, Steve's going to be texting you and calling you and talking about helping him adapt into this, but you don't seem too scared, Paul. You're ready to meet those challenges?
We're technologists. First, you know, we're fascinated by what we do. And, you know, everything that we have within the product has been driven by our customers. So when a customer comes up with a good idea, what we do is we take it, we make it better, then I claim credit for all of that. But it's a good relationship because it's, The ideas come from customers, and they say, what we're thinking about is doing X, Y, and Z. And we go off and we have a think about how you'd actually do it. And then also then how that would then scale out. So here's some stuff in front of you that you see that we did this year. So we did some Google Newsstand, subscribe to Google implementations. We created things like family accounts, very popular in Europe. We built some machine learning anti-churn tools, which look at the behavior of customers as they start to use the products less and less, and then start to predict when they're going to leave, and then use that for then sending kind of prompts and things like newsletters. We've been really heavy this year in things like video streaming and audio streaming. We've been building in a lot of tech for that as well. And payments, making things simpler for people to pay, make it faster for people to pay. And that's really what we've been doing sort of in 2022. It's been a very busy year. So as we deliver for customers and we deploy with customers, we have, the core team is also thinking about tomorrow. And again, we take feedback from everywhere that we can. And we also kind of work exactly with people who use our tools on a day-to-day basis, and we check in with them every quarter, and we say, what do you hate? What do you like? What can we do that's better? And sometimes out of those conversations, we get to make our products, we might just take something out or add just something in, and it makes people's lives just that much better and that much easier. So we're constantly evolving the platform.
Well, Paul, I mean, there's no question that you got a very, very busy year ahead of you. Steve, the rubber's hitting the road now. You mentioned the 60,000 earlier, but you have tangible results. Can you run them down for us and put a slide up here? Because you've got some metrics to prove that this is a symbiotic and fruitful relationship, correct, sir? So this is all real, right? 0 to you got to where you got to be, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially, like I said, our targets were set low. Maybe we lacked a bit of ambition, but as soon as we realized we did our targets after 3 months, we went and we customized our ambition accordingly. So yeah, we've done well. We can probably still do better. I think, we're still. I think we've done a good job of hitting our addressable market based on the footprint of users that we had just as we launched. And we had gone through a lot of changes. We used to have a larger team of digital journalists who wrote news in a slightly different way. So we've actually lost reach in the Irish market comparatively over the last few years, which just comes with the pivot as the focus went on a subscription business. We lost reach. So the challenge now is increasing the footprint back up again, and then look, it's all a numbers game. That top of the funnel, if we're getting more people in there, hopefully we'll get more people coming out of the bottom as well. So that's really what we need to do. Our focus now is about getting more people in the top of the funnel.
And it looks like you're well on your way. These numbers prove out that it's definitely going in the right direction, sir. So congrats.
It's going in the right direction. It's good, but it's not great. So that my honest assessment of how we're doing is good, not great. It's like you said earlier, let's move quicker, let's fail faster, let's experiment more. And that's the gig for us. It's a long road. And I don't think it's easy, but it's interesting.
Rick, it's your turn. You got a minute left. Rick, your job is to help make all this happen for any North American publisher. I assume if someone emails you at learnmore@flip-pay.com, that's going to wind up in your inbox. Am I correct, sir?
That's correct. If any publisher or content provider out there is looking for a true partner in content monetization of all sorts, whether it's looking at an end-to-end platform or whether it's looking at a specific tool, please consider us. Please reach out to us.
That is, if you're listening on the audio, not watching the screen, learn more at flip-pay.com, 646-893-0809. European viewers, there's a number there as well. By all means, I want to thank really for your valuable time. Steve, I know you had a busy day and you carved out this hour for us. Steve Dempsey, Group Director of Publishing Products, Mediahus UK and Ireland. Thank you for your time. Paul McCarthy-Brain, CEO of Flip Play, your neighbor as well. I'm sure the two of you will be sharing a nice Irish whiskey in a few hours. And Rick Vandervoon, who's now here in the US with me, Vice President of Business Development. Rick, thank you so much. All gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Mike. That's really enjoyed it. Thank you.